All right, welcome everyone. Today we were talking about a pretty hyped up topic. It's got a pretty silly name. It's called cyberbullying. For those of us that grew up in the 90s, that has a very 90s vibe. But what it's talking about is right, the internet basically. So bullying online. And when we say online, let's just say anything that is connected to the internet. Now that is your phone, that is your watch, that is your iPad, whatever it is. Technology, we're wired, we're plugged in, we know this, and wherever people are plugged in and organized, there's gonna be some bullying and some coercion. So Ben, what's the problems with that? I mean, the internet, the cyberspace is out there. What are our kids up against? What are we up against? What are some of the problems with cyberbullying?
Well, I think the big problem is when you look at the definition of bullying, it's the same thing. Right? Which is what? You're our definition, our bully guy.
You know what? It's intentional. It's repeated, right? It can come from an individual or a group, and there's typically a power differential.
Right. So the same thing happens online, but the difference is it's there and it lingers forever. And you're gonna be shared again and again, and it goes and goes. And this isn't news to anybody. We all know this because we've been inundated with the fear of cyberbullying, right?
It's scary.
And so what our inclination is, I think, is like parents and teachers and grown-ups who are like admittedly completely clueless about it. Like our inclination is just like, oh, shut it down.
Turn it off.
I'm just not gonna let my kid have anything, you know, and that's, I see where we're coming from on that, and for some people that works. But here's the issue, if I can tie in like a real world analogy here. Is, you know, through my travels working with different treatment centers, there are some that are proactive and there's some that are reactive. And the more reactive ones go the restriction route, okay? So like, hey, you know, you've had a hard, you're sneaking out with your friends, you're going doing drugs and getting into trouble. So what we're going to do when you get back from treatment, we're gonna put an alarm on the door.
Lockdown.
We're gonna lock your window, we're gonna put an alarm on your bedroom door. So then well, here's the problem, right? What about all the skills going into that? So all they got to do is find one workaround to get out, and that's it. And that is going to happen. As you said, we are inundated with technology all the time. So if we restrict, kids are going to find a workaround. They're always one step ahead of us. We're dorks. We don't get it, right? So I like to believe that I'm up and hip with the times, but I don't know. So that's the real issue. So what we need to do, rather than restrict, no, shut down, lock it down, is we have to just, as tough as it is, like we have to accept that technology is a major part of our lives. And I can't tell you how many grumpy old people I hear saying like, you know, kids these days, they don't even know how to have a conversation. No, they do. You look over there, they're just sitting on their phones the whole time. Well, maybe and maybe not. But kids are no less socially adept anymore. The issue is we need to look at it and accept kids are just plugged in. And we have to be okay with that, and rather than restrict, we have to adapt. Meaning we have to, rather than restrict, let's put some restrictions on it as far as like you can't be on it all the time, but we have to have an open line of communication.
Maybe instead of restrictions, parameters.
That's a great way to put it. That's a
better way to put it.
So we put parameters around it, and what we're trying to do then is once we accept that, then we're not now adversaries to our kids and being online, so they don't feel like they got to do these sneaky workarounds. Rather, it's like, hey man, yeah, you've got X amount of time online, you do what you got to do, and then let's talk about it afterwards. I'm not going to judge, and I'm not going to come down hard on you and like, you sneak around and creep around. But like, hey, anything going on? Are people being nice to each other on your feed? And the more open we are with that communication, hey, how you feeling? I've noticed you've been a little down lately. What's going on? Then that opens up the door for us, because just like in real life, the best predictor of a good outcome for our kids is the relationship they have with us as parents. Right? So we've got to take that relationship as a protective factor to the online, to the cyber world.
To the cyber world. So one antidote that I feel like that you're talking about is it's the forgotten nuance or skill of checking in. And with care, right? I think sometimes because we don't know what's going on or we don't know technology, we might feel a little bit like, I guess that's not my domain. You know, I sure hope they're doing okay. I think that phone is like a portal, right? And it's just connecting to somebody else. We should have, all the adults in kids' lives should have just as much interest in who that child is connecting with as we would if it was, you know, somebody that came to our front door. Is that safe to say?
Absolutely.
So we check in, we keep those up, and then because this is a problem, what are kids seeing out there? Let's just say, walk us through cyberspace for a minute, Ben. Put on your cyber boots and fly us into cyberspace. What is a kid, what are they up against out there? What are some things that they can, that's maybe like some traps or some sinkholes out there in cyberspace that you could help us out?
So I'll tell you, I think, I may be overstating this, but I feel like all the little traps out there can be summarized with one issue. And that is what they call keyboard courage. Oh. Right? Which sounds really cool, and I wish I could coin the phrase, but it's out there. Keyboard courage, meaning there is this slew of all these people that are coming at me and me coming back at them that are saying things that they would never say in person. Some of the most horrible things, you know. I mean, and even like with Twitter and Instagram, the access that we have to celebrities, you know, I've heard many celebrities interviewed. It's like, I cannot believe some of the things that people say to me, you know what I mean? And it happens all the time. And it's because we are removed. And so we get that keyboard courage of like, oh, I'm gonna be the big man, I'm gonna say something right now. You said something mean to my friend and I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna defend him, and you're a this, and I'm gonna say foul words that I would never say in my life. And I might even use some racist term and all these things that I would never dream of saying in real life, right? So we have to be aware that on both ends, I have to be aware of my own tendencies to say things that I wouldn't normally say, but I also have to recognize I gotta take things with a grain of salt. When somebody says something cruel to me, before I take it all personally, I gotta be like, you know what? You're probably suffering from keyboard courage.
Yeah, that's
I know
pretty
you
good.
don't mean that, you know what I mean?
I think that's dead on. So it's this false sense of, because there's that removal, there's that separation from us, people can drop bombs on the cyber world that they would never drop in person. And
it goes beyond, I think, apps. It goes even into just texting. You know, I've worked with a lot of girls when I worked in residential treatment with teenage girls who would send a text message about a friend saying like, yeah, you know, I'm kind of ticked off at so-and-so. She can be kind of this or that sometimes. And then they'll follow up with another text that says, you know, I love her to death though, and you know, it's just one of those things. And what happens is that friend they sent it to might delete the second message and screenshot it and be like, look what so-and-so said about you. And then you've just got a mess in front of you, right?
Yes.
And it goes, and you can deny it, but it's taken out of context.
Yes.
And it's there and it never goes away. You know, we freak our kids out about, you know, sending sexually explicit pictures and things like that, and that's a big deal.
Right.
But I think this is kind of a subsection of that too, because the issue of sending those things is you can't take them back and they're always out there. And that's no different than when you say, hey, you know, Ben's a real jerk. I don't really like that guy, you know, so be careful.
Oh man, so Ben, you just blew my mind here for a second. So I hope this just translates here. What I'm gathering here is this. Not only is it a problem because there's this cyberspace and stuff gets out there, all of a sudden the context is not our own anymore. That's a big one. That's a mind blower, because the context of our communication can be manipulated in cyberspace that it could never be. If we're having a conversation, this is the context. You can clarify with him, but once it's out there, it can be manipulated and it can come back at you anytime.
In fact, I've got one more quick one.
Okay, do it.
Somebody put on Instagram. This just happened at a high school that I work with. Somebody put a really cool picture on Instagram. And then in one of the comments, somebody put an incredibly racist comment. The next person did kind of like an up arrow in saying, I like that picture. That was their intent. Hey, cool picture. Then people deleted comment, fixed things. So what it made it look like was racist comment, next comment is up. Oh, I agree with that comment. And that kid who had the decent intentions, it completely wrecked this kid out of context.
Whoa.
Right?
So if that's not scary enough for the world that we navigate out there, right? What are we gonna do about it? What are we gonna do? This is what we're supposed to help out with. Let's do it.
Well, we gotta combat the keyboard courage. And I mentioned earlier, it starts, and I'm a broken record here, Ben, how many times you heard me say it? It starts with the relationship. That is the #1 protective factor that we have.
Great.
So within establishing that relationship, and like I said, adapting rather than restricting and accepting that that's just how the world is today, as we build that, we open a line of communication. And that puts us in a position with our kids to communicate the dangers and the issues and help them to open up about it, but also hopefully they'll listen to us and take a few tips.
Right.
So the best tips that I really can offer about how to combat keyboard courage, really, I need two things to make it as simple as I can. Number one is you get that mean comment and it just nags at you like, oh, I can't believe I said that. Ooh, and then it's not like a conversation where it's like, you walk away from a conversation and you're like, ooh, that was the perfect comeback. Why didn't I, because you got time. So you sit on it and then you come up with the perfect comeback that you would never say in real life.
Right.
So how to combat that is you say, hold on, go ahead, type that comeback up and then walk away. Come back in an hour when things have settled down a little bit.
That's good.
And look at that again. And that puts us in a little better emotional space. And then after that, let's say hour or whatever you think is a realistic time, read it again, but read it out loud. And this is really important because it's critical that we hear ourselves reading it out loud, because that's us actually saying it. And imagine if this person was here, could I fathom myself saying this to them, right? So those two things are immediate fixes or helps to these kids.
To keyboard courage. Right. Awesome. Another thing that I think we want to help everyone understand is that it's space. Whatever we want to conceptualize it, there is space out there in the internet, in the interwebs, if you will. And by adapting to this space, I don't think there's anything wrong with us when we're staring and our necks are locked in on our phones to think about it. Who else that we know and care about is on this phone somewhere, somehow? And there's nothing wrong after we've seen our silly cat video for 800 times to send a text to someone, our teen that we care about, our mom, our wife. Use social media, use texting to populate this space, because it really is just space, and it's on, it never sleeps, and you got to think about it. If nobody's taken the effort to put something positive out into cyberspace, well, there's plenty of people putting stuff negative out there. So that's another way to adapt, is to use it, adapt to it and say, you know what, I'm going to use this tool and I'm going to be positive with it, and teach our children how to be positive with these tools. It is a tool, just like I would teach my kid to use a can opener. I'm going to teach them how to use social media. It's just the way that it goes.
That's a great point.
And finally, what Ben and I, we are both broken records about it when we're talking about bullying and addressing bullying. At the core of this is quality relationships. And the last thing we want you to think about as you're addressing cyberbullying and just cyber interactions is, think of what we value as high quality relationships in person, right?
Right.
That same metric, that we are respectful, that we'll listen to one another's, we can agree and we can disagree, but we don't have to keep escalating to the point of just insanity.
Right.
What maintains real life quality relationships are what are going to maintain real life quality online relationships. And so, to summarize, adapt, don't restrict, right? Build quality relationships in any space, whether it's right here between us or out on the internet. And from there, combat keyboard courage by taking a breath, man, before you send something.
Totally.
Good enough?
Read it out loud. Absolutely, that's it. Dude,
cyberbullying, look out. On notice. No, that was cheesy.
Watch out, all you cyborgs. We're gonna get our Twitters on. Okay.
Thank you. Oh. Don't give control to the troll.
Ooh, I like